All right, welcome to Bigger Than the Game with Jeremy and Jose. We're going to be recapping episodes 5 and 6 of The Captain, the ESPN documentary series about Derek Jeter. Jose, let's get right into it, man.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on episodes 5 and 6?
Oof. They were really good. I'm going to say that. I know I was watching it, and I had to watch it a little later than I wanted to, but, I was in the middle of, episode 5. Yeah, it was episode 5. And I was like, oof, like, it's getting good. Like, you know what I mean? So I was texting you. That's why I texted you, like, yeah, this is some interesting stuff going on here. But I really, really liked them. And I feel like this thing is getting better and better and better and better as it goes on, which I'm gonna be honest, I'm really surprised at. But what did you think about 5 and 6, Jeremy?
I think they're the best episodes so far, and it's been a good one, and this took it to another level in every possible way. Derek Jeter gave more than I thought he ever would. Jeter's wife was really candid. I think
before you continue, she's fucking beautiful, man. Like I didn't know it was his wife.
I sang a little bit.
Whoa. Yeah, my man Jeter got that.
She's very beautiful. I didn't know that they were together. The shocker to me is I see like a couple pictures, not a lot, like before this documentary in the episode on Thursday night, episode 6. I thought it was like a very he met her like right at the end of it. I didn't I know it's the end. I didn't realize that they've been together this long as far as dating and marriage. That's what surprised me. I thought she might have came like 2014 or like right after he retired. I didn't realize that they've been together since like the 2010s. Like they've been.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too, and I was just like, it's another area he'd be A-Rod in. You know what I mean? Like it's like, man, he's killing them all over the place. But yeah, I just wanted to say that.
No, she's beautiful, and she was good on cam. She was great on camera. Like she was.
She was.
But I want to get right into it, man. There's a lot of stuff to cover in these 2 episodes, but to me, the thing that jumped out that I think a lot of people had jumped out for was the part on race in episode 5 with, this part with sports writer Wallace Matthews and really the whole Jeter family, and also the part with Gary Sheffield and looking back, which, the Sheffield thing I had forgotten about, honestly. I remembered once I saw it, but I'm like, oh yeah. But I want to go right into like that issue. That wasn't the first thing in episode 5, but I think it's the hottest thing of the night was the issue of race. I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, it was toward the end of the episode, but no, I agree. It's the hottest part of maybe both episodes, and that's what when they got into that, and we've been talking about that since episode 1. Like I wonder how they're going to tackle that. I wonder what Jeter's going to say to that. And he was very honest on how he felt. And the thing is, like, you can tell the difference in his tone when he talked about that. Like, he was just like cursing more this episodes, and it was just like he was dropping F-bombs. It wasn't like, oh shit. It was like, fuck that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, wow. Like, I was really surprised by his reaction in front of the camera. You know what I mean? Like, he was really raw, and you can see how much it really bothered him and still bothers him to this day.
Yeah, and I think the filmmaking choice by Randy Wilkins, and we talked on Twitter, so shout out to him. But the filmmaking was really well done. Yeah. And I liked it, honestly, better than like what we saw with The Last Dance when Michael had the tablet. I like that this was kind of like they were talking. There was like a back and forth between Wallace Matthews and the Jeter family.
Yeah, they were laughing and stuff in the background. Like it makes you feel like you're there.
So it's kind of like it broke down the wall a little bit. Mm-hmm. It was weird, cool in a way. I like the filmmaking part, but also it was the criticisms, in The Last Dance, and I just compare it because the Jordan Jeter connection, but also these films. The Last Dance, you didn't, when he looked at the tablet, like I feel like the juiciest parts Michael didn't comment on about himself too much. Like it wasn't that direct response But this was like a really direct, and they're really letting the criticisms come. And I give Jeter credit; he's
Yeah,
not keeping that out; it's staying in, and he's taking the heat. But um, the comment that Wallace Matthews made is really is not surprising. Of course, we're both
no,
we know black man, Hispanic man. We know that that's the way the world is, but
yeah,
it was just a dumb, ignorant comment that he made on the documentary.
yeah, and I was blown away, and I'm taking, not that I'm like deep into notes, but I'm just jotting some stuff down, and I almost had the same reaction Jeter's sister had. Like it was just like, wow, really? Like colorless? Okay, like what does
Yeah,
that even mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, and like I've heard comments like that in my life before, because obviously, like you mentioned, I'm Hispanic, I'm Puerto Rican, but I'm very light skinned, and it's like, like I get that all the time. Not all the time. I've heard that before, and so I can I get it in a way. You know what I'm saying? Like obviously I didn't get it to that level. What Jeter and his family like had to understand that, but it's just I was blown away by that.
no, and the thing is, talking about the issue, going back to, I like that they did. It was kind of weird because at first I thought ESPN had messed up. I'll be honest, because it comes back from commercial and it's that same journalist that I forget her name, so I apologize to her, but that black woman, and she was like,
From
like
Chicago, right?
right,
Yeah,
and it's kind of like they used the same clip from episode one. So I was like, and it felt like the clips about being biracial in episode one were in this one. So I was like, the ESPN mess up? Are they like, they came back from commercial and they started playing episode one again? And then I started watching and they started getting some other sport. I go, oh no, this is episode five, okay. And when they got to Wallace Matt, so when he starts off saying, well, yeah, we just never brought it up, and he said, well, part of that, the first point, he was like, Derek, it kind of was like you figured you weren't going to go anywhere, and that was by design because he always just gave you that cookie cutter vanilla answer. And that comment wasn't bad. I was like, okay, all
no,
right,
you hear that a lot. I was comparing it to like quarterbacks in the NFL and like head
yeah.
coaches. It's like very like surface level. They're not going to get too deep, not giving too many people like too much bulletin board material, all that stuff. But yeah, I'm good with that comment.
But then I rewatched it again today just to make sure I got it. Like when he goes, Derek Jeter, he didn't say it felt like, which doesn't make it any better. He said Derek Jeter doesn't identify, like he knows. Like
Yeah, like
he's
like
like
he
it's
heard it
fact.
from him. Yeah,
Exactly. He doesn't identify biracial. And he's like then and now. Like he went, and I was just like, oh, which I just thought when I watched it, when it was airing live, I thought he had said, I like kind of used it in past tense, which still was bad. But then I'm like, no, he didn't even use past tense. He made it like he's the authority on how Derek Jeter identifies racially.
yeah.
He knows. Wallace Matthews knows.
Oof. Yeah, and that struck a chord there with a lot of people, in this documentary, rightfully so, especially the Jeter family. And you were mentioning like his parents and stuff. Like they came on and they were, especially his dad was very upset and responding to that as well, and was very honest on how he felt. And I just mentioned Jeter's sister was on there, and she was just kind of like blown away. And then Jeter immediately was like, "Fuck that! Like, what the fuck is that? Like, you know what I mean? Like." And I was just like, "Yeah, exactly. Like, that's a good way to start that. Like, let them know. You know what I mean? Like, and you just got a raw emotion there. That was great to see."
No, and the thing is, it goes to that point, and they did talk about it, but just what baseball and society with, and we talk about it on our show all the time, but that duty of athletes and race is really something that, let's look at it. Derek Jeter played from 96 to 2014. So then it's like people want to say, oh, a lot of times we'll keep it to baseball, but you got, all right, well, Jackie Robinson, he integrated in 1947. Fast forward. Hank Aaron broke the record. Clemente, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, we're fine.
Yes.
That's what people want to give. Like, all right, we know Jackie Robinson and we know Hank Aaron. That's bad, but now we're past that, and it's like, no, we're not. And the thing is, it's like those were the spaces that we'll keep it to the Yankees, but all athletes have to navigate. But that's the tough space that Derek Jeter. You could look at Bernie. It was good to see that they brought in Willie Randolph. You
Yeah.
know,
Reggie
Dave
Jackson.
Reggie Jackson, Dave Winfield spoke really well on it. Like those are the things you have to navigate every day, and it doesn't. It's different when you're on that stage and you're in that limelight, but the feeling, the core of it is still there. How you're trying to navigate these tough, difficult white spaces.
Right. And it's also, we mentioned this in episodes previous, not just the Jeter episode, but just like how you're covered and, the terminology that's used in some of this stuff. And it's just different, you know what I mean? When it shouldn't be. But it's just, it is, and it's very difficult for that. And especially, and I like how they mentioned it. I don't know if it was Howard Bryant, but they were mentioning like you come, with baseball specifically, it's like, you're playing like for especially minorities. Now it's a little different, but especially when Jeter was coming up, it was just like a lot of white players, white coaches, white fans, white owners. You know what I mean? Like it's you're in that space and you have to learn how to, like you mentioned, like navigate through that. And if you're someone who's like a Caucasian descent, you don't have to worry about that. Like that's a load off that you don't even have like any idea what that feels like. And for a lot of these players like a Derek Jeter or just again like just any African American player or any of these Hispanic players that come in and have to be a professional athlete, but then 1A also have to try to deal with all that. It's very, very difficult.
No, and I think that's the thing where when Jeter says, when after they show Wallace Matthews clips and he reacts to it and he goes, well, you never asked me. And I've seen people comment and, people talk about it like today where it's like, like, well, I mean, today, like, the day after it aired and people were like, well, Jeter wouldn't have answered it. And I say this, no, if you talked about to Jeter and said, what's your thoughts on, this, police killing that just happened.
Yeah.
No, Derek Jeter would not have.
Yeah, he's not touching that.
He's not going to answer that. But asking about, hey, what about his foundation? Asking about, how did your upbringing influence, what you're doing with your foundation or with the Rachel Robinson and stuff. I think Derek Jeter definitely would have answered that. Would he have given you his heart and soul? Maybe not, but guess what? We're not entitled to that, and the media's not entitled to that either.
Right.
So people need to stop acting like they're entitled to get people's heart and soul and all their deepest, darkest secrets. They're not. You're not entitled to it. But I do believe Derek Jeter would have spoken on it if you would have come correct and asked it the right way.
Oh, I agree. I agree 100%. And like it's easy, like hindsight is 2020, and it's easy for him to sit there and say, yeah, like I would have, you never asked me, and. Like I'm really, he mentioned it in a couple episodes earlier where he was like, I didn't have that much clout and stuff like that. Like about the, I forgot the player, the one he got into the argument with in episode 3 or 4.
Chad Curtis.
Chad Curtis, yeah. About him getting traded away. He's like, I didn't have that much clout. But we see in these episodes how much clout Derek Jeter really had, especially with the media. But you can't say a guy's not going to give you a direct answer if you don't even ask him the question. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like. And I understand that thinking, but you have to at least give them the opportunity, and they admittedly never did. And it's not like it was 1 or 2 beat writers on there; it was 5 or 6 of them. You know what I mean? Like they never did, and that's on them.
And also, it's funny because throughout my whole time watching Derek Jeter, and I remember him from 95, 96, the Yankees were rising up. It's not like his parents were hidden or his sister, and then later on his nephew. They were right in the front. You saw them throughout his whole career. There's Charles and Dorothy Jeter over there.
They were always panning in the crowd.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you knew who his dad was, what he looked like. You knew what his mother was. So it's not like he hid it. It's not like you don't know. It's like, no, so to say like he was colorless, it was like if we as fans saw it, and you even heard media members in certain episodes talking about, I was talking to Dorothy Jeter, Charles Jeter, like they were also well known in the franchise. Jeter did not. That's how you know. Also, to your point, the clout it wasn't just Derek Jeter was prominent. The Jeter family was very prominent. You
Yeah,
know, Gary Sheffield, after that interview with Andrea Kramer, and we'll get to Gary Sheffield's comments, he reached out to Derek, but also the Jeter family. Michael
right,
talked about, I'm comfortable with Derek and the Jeter family.
right.
So Derek brings his family into this. So to say he identifies as colorless and doesn't identify is beyond insulting and beyond, but it's just stupid.
Yeah,
And I don't know Wallace Matthews, but that was a stupid comment.
right. It was very, very stupid, and it's going to that's sticking out in this documentary. You know what I'm saying? Like it's one of those things where it's like when you think of the Jeter documentary, right now I'm going to think of this. You know what I'm saying? Like as of right now, as of today, we got one more episode to go next week. But as of today, I'm thinking of the colorless comment and him still, you know, dealing with that and fighting with that. Even when he's done, it's retired, moved on, and they're doing a documentary on him. What's the one thing that still comes back and sticks out like a sore thumb? The race issue, where supposedly people keep telling us that that's not an issue. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's obviously an issue because look how people still think of him and it can freely speak to it like that. That's bullshit.
And the thing is, let's look at it. Someone who didn't get it back in the granted, it's also a testament to how he maneuvered, but also the era in which he played. But for someone who people think, oh, he kind of avoided the race stuff, he didn't really have that happen to him. You're hearing it in these episodes how conscious that was on his mind. We know from child, but just going to his career, that was the biggest thing he was trying to navigate, which was for him personally. He grew up. Those are battle scars. People don't, and you're starting to see it come now. People see when it comes to racism, you look at the lack of opportunity, which is there, the
Yeah.
injustice. People don't look at, and you're starting to hear it now, but people still have a long way to go. The psychological trauma that stays with you throughout, and it doesn't go away when you get it as a kid. I know you and I talked on air and a lot off air about it. Derek Jeter, you're hearing it. Those things that stick with you as a kid, when you think, okay, you're young, you don't know any better. Even if your family's telling you, I know we're kids. Jose, you're telling stories, and then all right, you think this person's cool with you, and then wow, he makes that comment. I thought we were cool. Like you came
Yeah.
over my house. We played, baseball together. We did, and I had so many. We could go on. We'll keep you here all night, everybody, if we told these
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
Where you're a kid and you're trying to navigate this, and you hear the thing, that hey, okay, some of these people don't look like me, but you're still trying to put yourself out there, and it's hard, but you're doing that, and then yet it comes back, and people smile in your face and will say, you're cool or we're cool with you, and then they're really not. And then you have those who are openly just coming at you. So like that doesn't ever go away for people. That
Right.
stays with them. And that has stayed with Derek Jeter. And it's no one's business to then say, well, how come you're not doing it boom, boom, boom? Because guess what? That's trauma that he is still dealing with. And we can see from how his reactions are. He's still dealing with that trauma.
Yeah, and he opened this docu-series with that very specific issue that he still deals with is with the trust stuff. Like we were talking about, we were kind of jokingly about it. Our last episode, when he was mentioning like trust, how he has trust issues, or when he talked about when he walks into a room, he looks at everybody because he's so used to people staring at him. Since he was a kid, they were walking to restaurants, walking places, and people would stare at them, and we all know why, right? Because they're a mixed family, and it's just like, as a media member, it's like you have all this information, you do or you don't, I don't know, right? Like, but and you're coming at this guy from not wanting to be candid and not give you all this information because again, like he's not trusting in all of y'all. He doesn't feel comfortable doing that because he knows he's a media savvy guy. He knows what's going to happen if he says the littlest wrong thing. And we've had it in this episode where there were some things that were said that weren't even true apparently, and how big it became in New York. So he had to be kind of like keep everything close to the vest, and even while doing that, stuff still happened to him, which is messed up. But again, I can understand why he was the way he was.
And the thing that I think we need to remember, when we look at things in the past and when we look at things presently and in the future, is we know what an OJ Simpson is like. And even for OJ Simpson, the decisions, so people want to say how OJ, which he, in my opinion, he did, he turned his back on his race.
Yep.
But you have to look at it. It navigated his mind. He made that. It wasn't just whatever. That was a conscious choice.
It's a business decision.
Yeah. So even for people to see that, like when you want to point to certain athletes, how much race is everywhere and everything, and it's not our fault. It's what is put on us. That even someone who like OJ turned his back, he had to pick that and make that choice, and it was on his mind how I'm going to navigate to get ahead, not just on the field, but then, commercially in my quote unquote brand. They weren't saying brand back in the 60s, but that's what it was. So I say that where we're quick to judge and say, if you're not always speaking on the loudest platforms, that you're not down, you're not doing this. We're quick to look at someone and how they are now, or how they speak, and, oh, is he really down? Is he this or he's that? You never know. You never know what someone is doing behind closed doors, how they feel, and sometimes the people who are the loudest speaking on something, then you get down to what the true core is. And it's like, oh, you said that you were down for this cause. You were down about, you were down to yell and protest, but really you're not when it comes down to it.
Yeah. So
it's key to remember that we can't judge. We can't just say, well, you're not the loudest vocal guy, because guess what? On all topics, whether it's race, Derek said it, politics, religion, whatever you want to say, you need everybody. You need those who are vocal and making that noise, but you need people who are behind the scenes doing it. You need those who are leading by example. We need it all. It takes everyone. There's not just one form of activism or one form to say, hey, I'm black, I'm Hispanic, I'm gay, I'm this, I'm that, whatever the case, and I'm proud. You don't have to always wear the T-shirt. Right. And then if you're not wearing a T-shirt, then he must or she must not be proud. That's not what it has to come down to. We need to remember that before you want to say, oh, Derek Jeter, is he down or not? In the end, the truth is, like he said, you don't know him. You never even asked him.
Yeah, and you're judging this guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and they've been judging him throughout his career, and obviously look what's still going on to this day. And again, like, all this really did, this episode for me, was have a better understanding of why he was the way he was. And you know what? Now I agree 100% with him. You know what I mean? Like, and that's such an added stress. And I know people sit there and say, well, they're getting paid. He was getting paid $24 million a year. You know what I mean? Guaranteed money. Like, that comes with the territory. And you know what? You're right. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're in New York and you're that big of a star, and, people are going to follow you, they're going to write about you. Okay. Like, they were openly admitting that they were trying to figure anything out with Derek Jeter, so that way they can put him on the back of the New York Post or the Times. You know what I mean? Like, and because that sells newspapers. Like, that's so, like, grimy. And that's something else, like, I wanted to kind of talk to you about, Jeremy. And this is kind of like all intertwined. It's just like the New York media and media just as a whole. Like, and I know podcasting is like a form of media, and so I'm okay with that. But it's like, man, like then we understand. Then like as fans, right, get upset when a player doesn't want to come to your city and sign to your city. We talk about this. I know we talk about this on and off the air a whole lot. We're both Philadelphia sports fans. We're born and raised in Philadelphia, and we understand that, like, if I was a player, I would not want to play in Philadelphia. You know what I'm saying? I would not want to play in New York. Send me to Kansas City, send me to St. Louis. I'm going to, like, have a nice, quiet career and leave me the hell alone. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know today, in today's age, like, with social media, everybody's in the media now. You can just post whatever you want on Twitter and stuff like that. But it's the way they were kind of, like, doing Jeter and A-Rod, because they mentioned A-Rod's name too, and it's like, just to sell papers, they were just kind of like dig until they found something. We all know that happens, but to hear them kind of like openly admit that was kind of tough to hear.
It was, and to me, when you hear like, "Oh, you make this much in the limelight," so that comes with it. I think okay, questions come with it. You know, people knowing who you are comes with it. Not having to be forced to talk about your trauma, not having to be forced to talk about who you're dating, who you're hanging out with, or hooking up. If it doesn't involve that profession, which none of this stuff that we're talking about involved Jeter on the field. You know, whether it's the alleged gift basket. And that was true what that lady
Yeah,
said, the tabloid lady tried to say in the documentary, well, we never alleged or implied, like that he was sleeping with someone. It was just that's what he did. He gave them out, which is total BS. Like you definitely
yeah,
were implying, and that was the whole thing for so long. It was like after he hooks up with a woman, he gives a gift basket and all these other things. I
yeah.
remember hearing like disclosure stuff and all that stuff.
Right, and she was saying we have photos, we just didn't want to publish them, which is a bullshit. Like if you have,
Mm-hmm.
that's the number one thing you're going to want. If you have photos, you're plastering all of that stuff all over the New York Post on the back page. It's making both back pages. It's making page 6. Like it's that when she said that, she lost all credibility with me.
And Jeter had a point. They showed that he responded to her. Oh, so where's the other article saying, "Hey, let's clear it up. We are not implying blah blah blah." That article never came. He's like, that
Right.
would have been a good article to read. He's like, and I'm like, exactly.
Yeah,
He's right.
that was a slick move right there. And I also love the point where he made where he was like, why weren't they asking Bernie Williams what him and his wife were doing?
Right. Right.
Like
Good point.
last
Yep.
night or last weekend or whatever, or Mariano Rivera or whoever else. It was only Derek Jeter. You know what I'm saying? Like and for me, like there was a reason behind that, and they just wanted to dig and dig to find. They wanted to assassinate this man's character so bad. They were trying to like beat the other writer. I forgot his name, but was talking about he would wake up in the morning and read the New York Post to see, what they posted because he didn't want to get beat by whatever. Like it's like all they were doing was trying to find little things here and there on Derek Jeter and to be the first to kind of like bring that out and have that in the media and stuff like that and get credit for that. Now look, I know that happens. Like I know that's the media's job. I know they're trying to be the first to kick off a story or whatever, but man, like this was crazy, man, to see this and really have them dive into it.
No, it made me as a man as a human being, and I always did respect Derek Jeter as a person because just the way he went about it, it made me as a person respect him even more. Hearing
Good point.
these
Yep.
episodes more, like I looked at him like, man, I always respect, but he was like, and rightfully so. Like I said, you didn't feel like you knew him, but I always just liked him. Like it's like how can you like dislike Jeter
Yeah.
unless you're just
Right.
trying to be a hater, But it made me like, wow, they like this docuseries, but these episodes in particular made me like, I like you a lot more as a person. Not that I disliked you, but like I see you now, and like you said earlier, I understand the calculated moves that you did on these things. I can understand it a lot better now seeing how these reporters are even talking to this day. Now that
Right.
you're in the Hall of Fame, you've been done, but seeing how they're talking about it, and then also just seeing what the '90s, it's just I respect them a lot more for it.
Yeah, and even where they were talking about all this media stuff, it was one comment one of the media members said was, and he was talking about A-Rod, and he was talking about how much A-Rod wanted to be Derek Jeter, and I was like, ooh, like that kind of like got snuck in there, but then once this guy was talking about like the racially neutral, colorless stuff, like I think that got kind of like buried in there, but that stuck out to me, and I was like, man, like you know like we all kind of knew that, but to hear somebody else say that and just say it so bluntly, I was like, wow, like that's a statement right there. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a big time statement. But again, obviously the other stuff is more important to talk about.
But I really wanted to open with that because that was what stuck out with me, and I know I
Mm-hmm.
knew when you texted me last night, you too.
Yeah.
But episode 5 opened with the '04 ALCS, Yankees, Red
Right.
Sox, and that epic collapse, since we're looking at the lens of Jeter and the Yankees. So not the comeback, but the epic
The
collapse
collapse, yeah.
of the '04 Yankees.
Yeah, we got the bloody sock again too, and I was like, like I forgot about that. But yeah, you got the bloody sock. You got, all those inside stories on, guys from the Yankees are overly confident talking about the series is over. And look, up 3-0. I thought it was over. I'm sure most of America thought it was over. We're talking about the Yankees here, and yeah, we're talking about the Red Sox, right? At that time, it was like the Red Sox, okay, they're blowing it again, and it was just, we were talking about the '03 series on our last episode, which is an all-time great series, but this one here also is another all-time great one. And I know you mentioned that they had two of the best series of all time back-to-back in back-to-back years, and again, we're probably never going to see that again. But this comeback was some amazing stuff. You know what I mean? I know, again, we're big-time Philadelphia sports fans, and the Flyers were down 3-0 to the Boston Bruins and came back and won that series. So I remember how I felt watching that. I thought they were done as well, and to watch that comeback. But watching this one and that stage, man, that was
Yeah,
big.
but
And
we're Philly. I'll say this: we're Philly fans, but we're
right,
sports history fans.
right.
Like we love sports, so like we're just as glued to all that stuff as we are to our local stuff too. It's
Exactly, and I love what Bernie Williams, and my apology for jumping in, but
so
I love what Bernie Williams said, that he was like, they kind of exercised almost all those demons with this comeback, and I felt like that when I saw that. It was like I feel like it was such a big collapse that it just like it was like the equivalent of like 4 or 5 of those Boston collapses. You know what I mean? Like it was like an all time. And he said that, and I was like, wow, like I felt that way, but I never really thought about it. And I was like, you know what? He's exactly right. Like that was a great point by Bernie Williams. It was. I felt the same exact way. I was like, yeah, this comeback kind of put a lot of that other stuff to rest. And obviously we all know what happened with Boston that year and the rest of those next couple of years. Like it just kind of made a lot of things even, in my point of view.
well to me it was I do agree. Like it was worth it. All that suffering, it was worth it to beat your rival. That makes up for Bucky Dent. It makes up for Aaron Boone. It makes up for the Curse of Bambino, because you have something that's the biggest collapse probably in sports history, the
Yeah,
biggest choke job, and you got that on them. So to me, that is like, you know what, it's worth it to get that. Like if they would have beat them like in 6 games, it would have been great. They exercised demons, but do you make up for all the other stuff? I don't think so. For it to be this historic down, '03 comeback, and how dramatic it was, and the games were so
right,
amazing. Games 4, 5, and 6, and then to stick it to them, and then the Yankees weren't the same after that, and then and they still aren't to this
right,
day, in my opinion. Even though the Yankees are having a good year, that changed how the Yankees operated to me from then on. And then it changed how the Red Sox operated, and it changed how baseball is operated, and it really changed how sports operated. So all those things, I think, definitely made it. And I think what was my feeling was live back in '04 was kind of confusion after that 19-8 Yankees win in Game 3,
yeah,
because to me, I'm like, you guys were really neck and neck last year and really should have beat them. And I'm like, man, but I knew that A-Rod had come on to the Yankees, but I'm like, you took a step backwards. You go from down losing in 7, now you're going to get swept. And
right.
it was something to me that I love that people, that Kevin Millar clip gets played all the time,
Yeah,
but I think it's great. I
and
think
it's the
it's
truth.
awesome.
And it's the
Mm-hmm.
truth. And
He
you
was
know
right.
what? To your point there, and I felt, this is how I felt watching that series. I felt like it was almost the opposite of like a Red Sox choke. You know what I mean? Like I was like, man, like this is where I thought they were going to like kind of like step over them after being so close last year. And like you said, they should have won that series. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like this is what happens, right? We've talked about this on this show dozens of times on like how teams have to get over that hump of that other team, whatever it is. And we all know the stories of like, the Bulls and the Pistons, and we can go on and on with that, like 49ers, Giants, all these teams that had to get over those humps. And I just felt like, all right, this '04 season was going to be that. Like they couldn't get over the hump in '03. They got that experience. Now they're going to have all this young talent with experience. Now it's on, and when they were down 3-0 and getting crushed, in that third game, I was like, wow, like this is a choke job. You know what I mean? And for them to flip it around, and I love how they were talking about how that momentum can shift and swing. And I was just, the way it was broken down, it made a lot of sense to me. And it was just a really good detailed breakdown on like they mentioned, once Boston won game 4, it was like almost like a team momentum that started to build. And then once you're losing those games, you start losing that momentum. It becomes very individualized. And we were talking about that with A-Rod in our previous episode on how, he really struggled, after the game 3 in this series. And the way that was kind of like broken down, it made total sense to me, because it's like, now you're losing down 1, you start feeling a little pressure. Now you feel like you have to do more. Boston doesn't feel like that. You know what I mean? They got nothing to lose, and they're just playing as a team. They're high-fiving and stealing bases, and it was just really like a really good theory. And I was like, man, like that made a lot of sense to me.
But to the Red Sox credit, before and after, that was different. And I know you mentioned the Flyers in 2010, and when they came back from being down, 0-3 to the Bruins, but when I had seen a team they're down, 0-3 in this, that game 4, and when they would win it, it was like the reaction would be from the team, from even the fan, everyone is like, all right, they won. They kind of stopped elimination for another, day. It wasn't like I would never watch a team being like, all right, we got this one. We're down. Now it's 3-1. Okay. It's kind of like, all right, we got it. So we pushed it off a little bit. When they won, it was a great game. Game 4 was dramatic. Dave Roberts and the steal.
Yeah.
And, what Big Poppy's, home run. It was awesome. I remember watching how I felt live, where I'm like, from the team and the fan, I go, they're really hyped, but they're down 3-1. And I was like, why? It felt different. It was like, they're acting like they tied the series up here. But that's the credit to the Red Sox, which was they knew like all it takes is that one game. And that's important. And I still see teams afterward, to this day, they're down 3-0 to get that win. It's not that Red Sox team was special with that mentality. They were special with that positive thinking. And that's a credit to them.
Right. And they knew they had the talent to they ever had the better team, in this series. So I remember watching this, and I remember they won game 4, and I was like, they won game 4. You know what I'm saying? Like, but once game 6 was going on, and I was like, if they get this game, like, they're going to come back. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to tie this series up. Like you mentioned, it felt different. You had that feeling because, again, you knew the type of talent they had. And, you have 2 aces at the top of the rotation that if you get a couple of these games, now you got to face game 6, Schilling, game 7, Pedro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you knew something special was coming. Once that game 6 happened, it was a wrap,
Let me ask you about, I want to ask you about game 6 real quick. Two things with A-Rod.
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah.
Yeah, hitting Arroyo. How'd you feel A-Rod in the documentary answering, talking about that?
Well, I'm glad you brought this up, right? Because I was about to say that. And so watching that live, right? At that point in time, my respect level for A-Rod was, he was a great player. He felt like he was like a bitch. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, not, and I don't mean like disrespect people like that, but it just felt like that, and I knew he was probably the best player in the league and whatever, like all of that stuff, right? When he did that, man, like that almost like cemented that notion for me. Like, this guy is like a chump. You know what I mean? Like, there's like certain things you just do not do. I don't care how great of a player you are. I don't care how whatever league you're in. Like, you don't do that in Sunday softball leagues. You know what I mean? Like slow pitch soft. You don't do that. Like, you just get tagged out. Like, I'm not asking you to stand there, but run through the bag, whatever you got to do. You don't do that, man. Like, no beer leagues, you probably end up, there might have been a fight. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
So just watching that's like a big time stain, which in a couple of stains in A-Rod's career. And then watching his reaction to that, like just time, it was like to the second power. You know what I mean? Like it was just like exactly like this. That's who you are. You know, that's why you had the career that you had. Like you had all that talent, and you had to come to a stacked, loaded Yankees team to be able to win a World Series because of that, because of your attitude, because of the way you think things through, because the way you play the game. You're just you're just a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like and on on the field for sure. Like it's just I know he's a great player, Jeremy. I know he's an all time great. I know he did got the roid issues, and I understand that. I think even without that, like we talked about with Bonds, if he would have stayed clean, he would have probably been a Hall of Famer anyway. He was already en route to do that. But there's certain things that you just don't do. I would have rather him I would have just stopped there and got tagged out like a good boy. Like no, dude, like you just play ball, man. Like
Yeah.
you just play ball like the way it's supposed to be played. Like if he would have came on this documentary, sorry, Jeremy, if he would have came on and just said, "Look, I made a mistake. I was bush league. Like I looking back, I shouldn't have done that. I don't need him to apologize to me, but just it was like BS." No, he doubled down on it, and he lost me. He's lost me forever.
It was a bush league, and as someone who doesn't agree with Kurt Schilling often, I remember he was on ESPN like right after, like probably I think it was right before Game 7, and they asked him about it. He called it a bush league play, and I never agree with Kurt Schilling anymore. And then really, especially once you slow mo it, he was like he could have broke Arroyo's arm,
Right?
and the truth is like yeah, you could have hurt him, which is the ultimate. But then B, it is just like I'm so glad because this is not the time of instant replay, So I'm so glad that they got that right because if the
Yeah.
Yankees would have won and that play would have happened, I would have still been mad all these years later.
Yeah.
So honestly, for him, thank goodness that they got it right because if the Yankees wind up winning the series and he does that, man, he's really stained because that was and honestly, if he would have ran like outside the baseline to like not get tagged, I would have given him that in the heat of the moment, like you're trying to like do something. So he
Yep.
tried to like dodge him or something, and he goes like outside the base path. It's like, what are you doing? But like, all right, okay, like okay, like
Yeah, it's
yeah,
effort. Yeah,
yeah.
like you're trying.
But like to just like and the way he just did it, it was a punk move, man. It's just
Yeah.
like that, like, and I'm like, don't even insult Karate Kid because I'm like
Oh no.
that lame ass movie. They don't do things like that. You don't see like this. I'm like, you're insulting Cobra Kai. Don't incite, Daniel's son and Johnny Lawrence. They're even them. They don't do that. They don't look that fake in the movies. That's how fake and phony you looked. It was terrible. Like I'm like, oh
Terrible.
God.
Terrible, 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 terrible look for a great talent. You know what I mean? And you're right. If because even Sheffield said it, he was like, if we would have scored there, we would have won that game. And I do feel like that too. But how about this, Jeremy? Even better. How about in a crucial moment of the game, step up and get a hit? You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
don't hit a weak ass dribbler to second base in a big crucial part when Derek Jeter came up, got a single, tried to get the rally started. He's on first base, pumping fists and all that stuff, and you come up and hit a dribbler like off the end of the bat to second base. How about get a hit? You know what I'm saying? Like you didn't
Yeah.
even have to worry about that. And I know you've been talking about that in earlier episodes on how he shrunk in these couple series after Game 3 because he had a good couple first games against the Red Sox for sure. But after Game 3, he was shrinky dink. You know what I mean? Like he was
Mm-hmm.
done. And that him doing that just kind of like I think one all the pressure that he was feeling from coming up short all often in that series, the second half of that series. I think that played a big time part in what he did. And then two, like again at that point they haven't won anything while he was there because he was his first year, but the pressure of playing in New York, having to win a championship or bust. He had never felt that. In Seattle, they had some good teams. They had the Griffey and Randy Johnson, Buhner, like Edgar Martinez. Like they had those good teams. Were they close to winning a World Series? Yes, but I didn't really always look at them like, oh, this team is going to win it this year. Like no, like they were a really good team, but I don't think they were at that level. Texas, good offensive team. That was it. You know what I mean? And he comes to
Mm-hmm.
New York, and the pressure is on, and you're the best player in the league, and you do that, man. He lost me. He lost me, man.
Yeah, he did, and I'll still be honest. I still don't really feel like I have a real answer of why he went to New York.
Mm.
Like Alex Rodriguez, like I don't like, and I think that's him. Where like I don't believe anything he says, so I'm like, what was your motivation to go to the Yankees? Was it to take the pressure off of you? Was it to grow your star better? Was it to have your star bigger than Jeter's to try to take that city? Like I don't know because and then everything he did, and he would put up the numbers, but it just didn't seem genuine. And then, so when he says in
Right.
episode whatever 2 or 3, if they told me I play shortstop, coming back to Texas, you said it then on a recap, and then just hearing him talk more and more, you're a liar. And
Yep.
part of me is like, were you trying to just say just to get in the door, I'll play third base, but really I'm better. And if Derek slips or my numbers, whatever, they're going to ask him, hey, let Alex go to shortstop. You go to third. You move to first or something like
Or yeah,
that.
move Jeter to second, or you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it was.
I don't
He
know
was a
why he
sneaky
went
dude.
there. Because if you're
Yeah.
not, it's like weird. Like you're not a pressure. Like you could tell he didn't like he liked stardom, but not the pressure. So then
Right.
you go to the Big Apple. I just don't understand. Like I still don't get what his, and maybe we never will know what the motivation was to go there.
Yeah, I honestly think he wanted to take over. Like I don't see any other reason why you would go there. You know, like if you're gonna, you know, if you want to win, like there's you definitely can win there for sure. I mean, they won, but there was other teams at that time who were right there. We talked about the Red Sox. We talked about a couple. There was a couple other teams, and you know, the Phillies were there. And I'm not saying the Phillies were trying to trade for Hunt, but there were a few teams in that era that were. If you add an A Rod, like you're probably winning the championship, and so I'm sure he had options. Maybe I know the contract was huge, and I don't know who wanted to take that contract, but I mean, I know that played a big part in it, but you can't tell me like you're the best player in the league. You're going to another team. You're going to the best team in the league, the best organization in the league, and you don't want to be the best player in the face of that franchise when they have another guy who's a face of that franchise, who's been a face of that franchise for years, and is a guy that you guys don't get along, and you play the same position, and you know there's documentation stating how you think you know this guy is not as good as you, and we can go on and on. Like I think there's no other reason for why he would want to go there but that.
Looking back, and because I have a lot I want to say about Jeter though too, but for me at least, this last point, I don't know what you have, but on A Rod, looking back, and I know it's easy, we're not one of them, we're not Jeter, we're not A Rod, but I think it would be a bigger move because I remember Cashman called Jeter, hey, we're looking at signing Alex Rodriguez. How do you feel about it? If A-Rod would have went out and he's the one who says, hey, I want to come, I'll play third base. How do you feel? I give A-Rod a lot more props at least
Right, right.
if he's the one to call. But the fact that Cashman had to do it, it just still leaves that lingering. I don't know what your motivation. I believe the only thing I can say is you wanted your star to be bigger. That's the only thing I feel like, yes, that's part of it. Other than that, I don't know what else is part of it.
And then in episode, I think 3 or 4, when they were talking about when him and Cashman were, you know, sitting next to each other at the award show. What does he do? He starts blaming on the alcohol, right? Like, you know, and he starts talking about, oh, I was drinking, and you know, we started talking, and you know, I was drinking some more, and then he just mentioned, hey, would you play third base? And he was like, you know, I had a couple drinks at me, like he's blaming it on something else instead of just like, you know, I sat next to him and I kind of nudged him about third base. Like, you know, it's just always like he's always trying to like slide in. Yeah.
Well, he's trying to make it seem like it's a joke, but it's not.
It's not a joke, man. Like,
and he's like really like making that part of the story. And also, it's like, well, you think people are dumb watching this? Like, because I'm like, I just don't know, because I'm just like, if that would be a lame excuse if he had some drinks and he signed a contract that night, right?
Right.
You still can't blame on that. But it's like, bro, This was a whole process. So like, even if you could say alcohol, the next day you could be like, I don't want to do this. Nah, man. Like, and then it's done. You tell your agent, I don't want to go there. Like, you know what I mean? So like, why are you bringing up alcohol? It has nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? Like, is that like I had some drinks and I just signed it right? And boom,
he pulled out the contract and I didn't even know.
Then
I'm like, all right.
I'm like, all right, maybe.
We've all made those mistakes.
Yeah, I'm like, you shouldn't. You can't. I'm like, you one did the drinking, but okay, you just did it that night. But I'm like, bro, there was a whole thing here, man. Come on, like looking sorry.
Yeah, and it's just I can't respect that, Jeremy. Like I cannot. I don't care how great of an athlete you are. If you're like, if you just can't like man up to your stuff, like you're going to lose a lot of people. You're going to lose a lot of people in the locker room. You're going to lose a lot of fans, and they're not going to respect that. And that's how I feel like with A-Rod. Like, as much as I know he's a great player, like I totally know that. If I was starting a team, he would probably be my shortstop. You know, but like, I don't know.
I'm getting frustrated because I got to move on. But I'm just thinking, even, and I'm sorry, everyone watching. I forgive me, but I got this point one more for me to make, at least. Like, the comparison after for the Brunson and Royal thing, he brings up Mike Tyson biting Holyfield, which that alone is terrible.
I forgot about that.
That's terrible because
twice.
He did it twice, and also that wasn't like Tyson in battle. That was Tyson copping out that he didn't want to be there. He's frustrated. He's fighting the guy that he
admittingly,
yeah, that he didn't want to fight. That he was copping out. That was a coward move. I'd rather Mike just not come out the corner than bite the ear. Like, come on. So I'm like, that's the example you're going to give of a guy being a coward? Because that's what, like, actually, it's the right example, but he's making it seem like a connection. Like, hey, he was just in competition and he bit his ears, and I'm in competition, so I try to wipe the ball away. No, Mike Tyson wanted to get out of that ring. He was frustrated because, Holyfield had a couple headbutts, but he couldn't beat Holyfield. And his punches weren't making Evander shake. Evander was right there, and Evander's whooping him. And Evander had beat him before. So guess what? You were shrinking. You're down 3-2. You're feeling the pressure, and you didn't know. And then you didn't get a hit. You had a little dribbler, and crap. I didn't move it was my time to shine, to bring the runners home, to try to clinch the series. I blew it. So you know what? This is my way. I can try to cheat and do a little punk move out and try to get the base. So it's the perfect comparison, but it doesn't make you look good. It makes you look worse.
Yeah, we're going to end it there. I think that's a perfect way to end it, but you're exactly right. It was a perfect comparison because it was probably the second ultimate punk move to that ear biting, in sports history. So I know, Jeremy, like we both mentioned this at the beginning of the show. We really enjoyed both episodes. Let's jump into episode 6. Like Yankee Stadium. Like, I love how, like you mentioned it on Twitter. Like, I love the camera shots and like them panning over. I was loving it. I was all over that. That looked so super cool. And then the way they were doing it with the old Yankee Stadium and the new Yankee Stadium, it was super cool. I know you enjoyed it. Again, I know you were posting it on the Twitter page. That was awesome.
It was awesome because I was fortunate enough. I went to a few games at both, but I went to a few more at the old Yankee Stadium. I've gone to a couple at the new, and it was that big deal. And I'm not someone who's gone, to a lot of those historic ball. I haven't been to Wrigley or Fenway. I would like to, but I can say I did get to go to the old. Yeah, I've been to Dodger Stadium is like that too, but like the old Yankee Stadium, I got to go a few times, and you felt the history, and just as exciting as the game, it was for me. Just a quick story. It was 97 was the first time, right after the Yankees were defending champs, and the Mariners were in town, and you had A-Rod with Seattle, and and I really liked that Mariners squad. So Griffey, get to see my favorite player. Griffey was there, A-Rod and Cora and Martinez and Jay Buhner, and then all who we've been watching on that Yankee side. I'm so pumped for that game. But as equal, I wanted to walk around and see everything and get close to Monument Park. So for the fact that, and shout out to the director, Randy Wood, because it was just beautifully done. And to hear them talk about it and to hear the way it is special that you think Yankee Stadium, But they're right. When you go to the old one, especially, but even the new one, you're in that neighborhood. It's the
Yeah.
neighborhood bars. It's people on the street. Like, you're not like secluded off, kind of like, oh, you got to go a few minutes away to get into the
Yeah.
Bronx.
It's not like MetLife, like you're in
Right.
Jersey or something. No, it's not
Yeah.
like that.
It's like you are there and you're in the community and you see that it's pretty cool, as global and as iconic as the Yankees are and that franchise. It's cool that it has that stardom outside, but it's also a neighborhood team in the end of the day, and that's cool.
Yeah, that is cool, and that's why I can understand like I know Yankees fans are Yankees fans. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I can understand the love, right? Like if you're from the Bronx, and like how can you not love that team and be a Yankees fan? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I know I know a lot of dudes from New York, and you know I'll get into that in a little bit when we're talking about the '09 series, but like who are diehard like Yankee fans, and I get it. Like I totally understand it. Like I've been down in New York, and I went with my friends, and you know you catch the train. Next thing you know, you're like, wait, that's Yankee Stadium right there, dude. Like holy shit. Like you know I didn't know it was like, because I'm used to how it is in Philly, where it's like separated from the city somewhat. It's, you know what I mean? Like it's a sports complex like center, and it's like all the stadiums are in one spot, and you know there's neighborhoods, but you have to drive a little ways, and
Yeah,
you know
they're not so far, but they're not right in the heart of it either.
yeah,
Like you got to,
yeah,
there's a few blocks away for Philadelphia and South Philly, like because there are neighborhoods, like it is close, but
yeah.
it's not in the heart of it.
No, no. So I've never seen that in person. Like even I've been to like Candlestick and stuff like that. That's also like the same thing. It's like off of highways and things like that. So I think that is cool, and I can understand like why Yankees fans have that love for that team, especially like obviously the winning and the players and all that. But that feeling you must have of your team, like Fat Joe was talking about it, like you know when they're playing, it lights up the sky. You know what I mean? Of course, Fat Joe had to be in this, right? Like, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, it
But
lights
he
up the
brought
sky.
something. He brought something.
He did, and he talked about his son that I did not know about, and so I appreciate him being like vulnerable there. It's something that he doesn't do, is talk about his son, and like I appreciate him doing that. As much like we were talking shit about him, but I
No,
appreciate that.
I honestly, my respect on the side note for Fat Joe, where I got it from, I didn't know it until honestly COVID, the pandemic, and him doing his like Instagram live show, which I did really enjoy. You know, the Fat, you know, having those joke moments. So I do like Fat. I was giving him some stuff earlier out of fun. I respect Fat Joe a lot, but it was from that. It was from him talking about even like the George Floyd protest, and he wanted to go out, but because of his son, and like his wife was like, you can't go out there with COVID and you have a son, like,
Yeah,
so he was like, I wanted to go, but like the fam was like, you can't. And that was my first kind of inkling in him talking about. So it was during this pandemic is when I'd heard that, and that was an interesting perspective. Like you
right.
think about beef and how bad beef can be, and even as hip hop fans, we still can get in it sometimes, like, oh man. But that's the thing, like, you don't think about, like, man, I have an autistic son, and it's like, especially back, I think now you would get critiqued if you came
Yeah,
at someone's autistic child. But back in the '90s, I don't think that.
yeah,
Sadly, I think
open
that would have
game.
been open game, and so I understand him better, and I understand why he made that decision. Like I really do.
Yeah, I've been a huge Fat Joe fan, but again, like we were just talking shit on him a little bit, but I respect him. I didn't know that until this episode, so yeah, I respect him definitely for that decision. But yeah, like it was just, again, like just to kind of wrap this point up, it was just it is cool, and then I really enjoyed how they captured like the community aspect of it, and they were interviewing just your average, you know, average Joe fan, and it was just really cool. That was really well done.
For me, for episode 6, the thing that stuck it out. Now we talked about Jeter as the man. I respect it. For me, these 2 episodes doubled down, and even to an extent made me go even more on not taking away that he's a Hall of Famer, not taking away he's not part of great teams and great moments and stuff. That Derek Jeter is overhyped and overrated as a player. As a man, my respect grows more. As a player, it goes down.
Talk about
And
it. Talk about it. Let's
for
go,
me,
man.
this is, well, I want to see what you, because I didn't know how you felt. For me, it was just honestly, looking at the fact that after '04, even with '04 on, that those new guys are coming in. And now we know that a team is, I'm not saying that Derek Jeter's leadership, and in my opinion, lack of leadership is like the number one reason. But if you're the guy, you're that leader, right? And now, Paul O'Neill is gone, Brocious is gone, David Cohn's gone, Bernie's older. You're really now you're not just like a leader by because you're one of the good players, but even by like just tenure and even at this point by age, you're supposed to be a leader. And the fact that there was, you heard Sheffield say it, but Cashman, that faction of there was the people part of the championships and part of that dynasty run, and then the new people were segregated over here. I look at Derek Jeter. Now, leadership styles are different. And he commented in episode 6 saying, I should have gone out to eat with my teammates and more. And that's one way he could have done better. But you don't have to do that, Jose. To me, just in the locker room, right. We practice, batting practice, wherever, getting to know them on trips, getting people together, all those things. Or one-on-one, talking to them. Hey, what's going? How you feeling? Blah, blah, blah. All those things is leadership that, wow, he let go. And I do believe, hey, he's a human being, and I understand. A big part of that was the A-Rod thing, and that he just wasn't happy that A-Rod was there. But I look at this. Now, people, Michael does the comparisons, and other people, MJ and Jeter, it's not a comparison at all. But, like, people like to do that. But let's look at Michael. Now, we've talked about it on our podcast and people about Michael's leadership style, and that's not for everybody, but I can say this. Michael had that same thing. Michael, won the first 3 titles, goes away, and he comes back. And besides Scotty, that's a new team he's with. He had to bring those guys in. And he said in The Last Dance, he said in other things, he said in Luke Longley's documentary that these guys didn't put the work in like me and Scotty to win titles, but they're riding off of this popularity from that first three-peat. He wanted to show them the hard work that it took to get there. And this is what we have to do to get back there. Now, you may not like the style and the approach, but that was leadership. Right. We'll look at it this way. Okay, it's a little bit different, but not too much, Jose. Dennis Rodman was a part of the Bad Boy Pistons. Big rivals. We know that with the cheap shots he did on Scotty, took shots on Michael. Guess what? When Jerry Krause and Phil were talking about, hey, they want to bring in Rodman to the Bulls, but that whole rivalry, how will it be? Michael and Scotty said, we're fine. And they made him feel like they were fine. They didn't just say it, they did it. Jeter, you said you're fine with A-Rod coming here. You made those words. You could have said no. I don't care what you say. You could have said why. I'm not sure. You said, yeah, act like it. Bring them in. Bring in these guys to the fold. Bring Sheffield into the fold. Bring in the Tom Gore, whoever else. Bring them into the fold. That's something that, to me, that team was lacking leadership, lacking cohesiveness, and it took Brian Cashman saying, I'm going to get CC Sabathia, not for his arm, honestly, but because he's a team guy, he's a leader, he brings people together. I'm going to get Nick Swisher. He has a bat, but he's a team guy. He's a leader. He brings people together. And honestly, Jeter wasn't the guy on that 09 squad when they finally went back and won it. It was he was just a part of it, and he was like, whatever. And they kind of pulled him up personality-wise. So to me, this whole leadership thing, I'm really questioning, and I look at it a lot less with Derek Jeter.
Right, and that's a good point, because they even mentioned how, like, it was the happiest Jeter had been in years, right? That 09 season, he had a good season, and, yeah, it makes a lot of sense because a lot of the leadership stuff, other guys had taken that on. And, it's funny because in one of those, they were talking about all that, and I believe it was Michael Kay that might have said this, but he was, and I'm going to paraphrase, but he was just saying like, these guys came in and Derek Jeter let them be themselves. And I was like, what? Like, no, that's not how this thing works, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, he has, like, he can be a leader and he can try to, like, whatever, communicate with them and all, whatever, everything that comes with that. But he's not letting them do anything. Like, these are grown men and they're going to come in and they're going to do what they normally do. And that's why this team made that sudden turnaround in 09. also spending $500 million in an off season, right? Like
Yeah.
that also helps too. Like, and you talked about, CC Sabathia. He was a great player at the time. Mark Teixeira, another great player at the time. They bring in Swisher, they bring in AG Burnett, we thought was going to be a great player at that time. So they added all this talent. You still had A-Rod, you still had Jeter, you still had a couple Asian guys. Like, they set this thing up and they add all these pieces. And to your point there, I mean, it's like, a lot of these guys don't feel like they're a part of the team. And that's not only on Jeter. We're looking at those other guys that you were mentioning that were, winning those World Series. And I just think they were really feeling themselves. And it's just like, oh, we won these championships. Like, you guys got to kind of come to our level. And they're like, no, like, you guys, you haven't been winning in a little while. So I think you need to kind of like even this thing out. And they did that 09 season and made it to the World Series and won it.
But that's the thing, and we did a podcast episode on Bill Russell. Check out our podcast feed, which just dropped, and how Bill Russell had great talent, but what separates him, against a Wilt Chamberlain were those intangibles.
Yep.
And to me, I'm not saying Jeter has to be Bill Russell. There's only one Bill Russell. But what I am looking at is the fact that as wrong and ill-placed as A-Rod's comments were, that not only was he right, though, on the field, but also as a leader. Now, I get it. Like, Jeter was – what I see him as was he was focused. He came into the game in 95, 96. He's 21, and he had a maturity of you didn't have to tell him, like, come on, man, batting practice. Come on, man, focus up. He was a driven guy, and that you can't, take away or diminish, and I never would. So that's awesome. And you can say he was, I guess, leadership by example with that, but then those other guys were like that too. And the pressure wasn't on him. And then there was older guys, Paul O'Neill and, Brocious and like I said, David Cone, who were older and doing that and were showing Derek Jeter that drive too. So the fact that, like, they didn't have to really get on Jeter, he just was doing it was awesome. But he had guys, like they said, that was built from Gene Michael and then honestly Buck Showalter, and then it came to Torrey and Bob Watson and Cashman as GM, but that was ingrained bigger than Jeter. So to me, like, that's fine, but if he's this great leader, he carries that over once that first wave from 96 to 01 is done. Then that leadership, you can see that there. He's that bridge. The problem in all those years from after 01 until you get to 09, there was no bridge because Derek Jeter wasn't the leader. And that's something that wasn't really talked about, and people kind of wondered why. And I'm not saying it's all his fault. You can look at the fact that they were just trying to spend money and they had lost their ways of how to develop a team is a big part as well. But that lack of leadership and hearing that Cashman had to talk and say, can you squash this thing with A-Rod? Or how come guys are feeling this way? I look at Jeter even less. Like that whole intangible thing, it goes down in my eyes from watching these two episodes.
Yeah, and I have 2 points to that. It's like, well, my first one is, he did it with Clemens, right? We were talking about it. Clemens comes in, signs. They had a little bit of friction as the players, and then he comes in and squashes it immediately, right? And it squashes it, and now he's one of the guys, one of my best buds. I love him like a brother, all this stuff. Like, what happened with A-Rod? What happened with these other guys that you couldn't do the same thing? Like, what's the difference there? You know what I'm saying? Like, my other point to that is, someone who I've gained more respect for also due to this documentary is Wayne Cashman. Because I always thought he was just a guy that was in here like spending money and like, he was
Brian
Cashman. I'm thinking of somebody else. Yeah, Brian Cashman. Sorry. Wayne Cashman's an old coach for the Flyers, but yeah, like him getting in Jeter's like face and coming at Jeter. He was the only person doing it. Obviously, it was talked about in this documentary. You know what I mean? Like how guys were team officials were scared to talk to Jerry Jeter and criticize him because, again, they don't know what's going to happen after that. And he had the guts to do that. And I like that what you're talking about. Like, he brought up the A-Rod stuff. He came at him, and then we'll get into this in a minute. Like, with his skills diminishing and all that
No,
stuff. And
let's go right now to that, man. Like
yeah,
that bad defense. That I know you talk about that bad Jeter defense.
yeah, and it's in I know a lot of Jeter fans, and again, he's a great player, but they like to talk about him defensively like he's Ozzie Smith, and that's nowhere near the truth. And he was decent defensively, but Wayne Cashman was coming at him and letting him know, like, hey, like analytically, it's showing that you're hurting us defensively, and he was talking about changing like how you work out and maybe the diet and all this stuff. And again, Jeter like got super offensive, and even during the documentary was still you could see that really bothered him, and he was offended by that. But I give Cashman tons of credit, you know what I mean, for doing that, and because I don't think a lot of GMs would have done that.
I laugh because it just cracks me up because I do. And I'm not trying to be a hypocrite or contradict myself because I did gain a lot of respect as a person for Derek Jeter in these episodes 5 and 6. I really did. But like you said, and this is like not, I don't know if this is him off the field, but on the field, and great competitors have it. There's an ego. You can still hear it in him. You still see it in him. But then, that's why the player, I look at him, the man I respect, the player, because he, the comment that he had, I didn't like, he sounded really cocky in episode, what was that, 2 with Nomar. That's what losers say. Sorry, Nomar. And he admitted it, but then he says it like, our teams were better, though, in 01 when we lost. He's like, right. I know that's loser talk, but our teams were. And it's like, well.
Which one is it? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Nomar. But blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you sounded real snot. Like, to me, like, you didn't have to make that shot at Nomar.
Yeah.
And let Nomar make his point, but you took that, like, we beat you kind of thing. And I guess what? I feel like if Nomar wouldn't have gotten traded in 04, would he say that? Because Nomar has he would have the ultimate, like, in your face on him. So, Manny, that whole sign at the Boston Parade in 04, like, Jeter's playing golf, we're doing this. That one bothered me, like, ready to cry on camera.
Yeah.
And I was like, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad it bothered you.
And then to even add, and that's a great point, Jeremy, but to even add to, like, the leadership stuff we were talking about and, like, how the media was starting to question it, too, with him. Again, his skills, like, again, he was getting old. He's 36, 37 years old, and that's what happens. Like, you can't beat the clock, man. And, defensively, his skills were diminishing. But now offensively, he's not, hitting that normal close to 300, 20 home runs, 80-something, 90 RBIs. Like, so why not hit lower in the lineup? And he was given, like, a lot of pushback on that. And I get it. Like, as a player, athlete, like, I'm not going to go to my team and say, hey, hit me 8th in the lineup. Like, I'm not going to probably do that either. But, again, when that came up, he, like, took offense to that. Like, and I don't understand that. Like, dude, if you're not playing well, like, this is what normally happens to guys who don't play well. Like, they get moved down in the lineup until they start playing better, and then they can earn that spot again. But to him, he didn't feel like that. He was comfortable hitting 265 in the second hole, not doing much.
And to me, it looks like maybe there's a reason why they felt like maybe those guys on the field. And is it wrong? Yeah, because you are paid to do a job. And Brian Cashman should not have been the first one to say it. If he wants to be the one to be the cleanup guy and reiterate and be like, come on. But Jeter should have heard it first before, Brian Cashman got involved. But right. Is there a reason why then that these guys are like, he ain't going to listen, or it's too sensitive, or we're in trouble, we're kind of in weird spots? Because, like, if you see from other times that he's gotten criticism, and I'll say constructive criticism,
right?
Not like just like you suck, but constructive, he doesn't take it well. He shows that he will respond afterwards, like physically. He will work hard and be committed, and like he will try to prove you wrong. I give him that. Like, he has that mindset, but he doesn't want to hear the truth in front of him. He's thinking, yeah, I'm a little rusty, but I'm fine. It's like, bro, you are not fine.
Right.
Like, you are struggling. And
guess what, Derek? Hanley Ramirez that year was better than you. Troy Tulowitzki that year was better than you. So
see, you beat me. I'm about to bring that up.
You get mad all you want, but that was the truth. You know what I'm saying? Like, they were two all-stars, top of their positions. They were better than you, bro. You got to take that.
The thing is, and that came up, for people who hadn't watched it, like that came up when Jeter had that he had a contract, it was like expired, and like it was coming up as his contract negotiations, and Derek said the only thing I told them was to keep it private, and it wasn't private, right, to start with. And so I can hear his beef with that he had then, and still sounds like he has it now. I get it.
He does.
Yeah. But I do think Brian Cashman kind of got tired of his Jeter stuff, because Jeter asked a question to him, well, who's a shortstop you'd rather have than me? And Jeter thought that he wouldn't answer it. And Brian Cashman didn't go there, but he was like, usually I wouldn't answer it. And I don't know why. He didn't really say why, what made him do it, in my opinion. But I believe he kind of was, you're not bigger than the franchise. It was kind of like that kind of thing. Like, I think he was getting a little tired of him being like, no, you're not doing these things. Like, and I think he was like, you're a big part of, like, you're a face, you're a popular face, you're clutch, you've helped out, you've contributed big, but you're not the number one guy. And honestly, you never have been. And let's come down to the point. You never. So to me, there's a thing. Why would Brian Cashman say that? If both parties, so that means that they both know how this goes. We know Brian Cashman knows, but Derek Jeter knows how it goes, because they both say all these years later, I asked that question, I didn't think he would answer it. And Brian Cashman saying, I usually don't answer that, but he asked it. Then there's something to the, there's something there. And you're right. Both those guys were clearly better than Derek Jeter at that point.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even, I wonder if you look at their numbers, compared to Jeter's best numbers, it still may go to them. But at that point in time, it's like, bro, it's not even close.
Yeah, and then, them telling Jeter, go ahead and if you want to test out free agency, go right ahead, man. And then all of a sudden he signs his deal, So it's kudos to Cashman, you know what I mean, for that. And I was just like, that was cool to see. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's like almost like, dude, like, I know you were great at one point in your career, but all the great ones, and I guess it's like something that comes with being a great player. It's like you never feel like, your skills diminish or whatever, but they do. And you got these young guys coming in here playing extremely well, and it is what it is. Like, you got to take that, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, and to him, it felt like he really struggled letting that go.
And there was something to this whole popularity thing, because they went through all those Yankees greats who, on their last legs, kind of got shown the door, including his core teammates.
Yeah.
But Jeter, they kept parading out there. And that's the business part of it, too. And that's the power play I think Jeter knew he had. And it's just interesting. Like I said, the man I've grown to respect more. The player I'm looking at even lower. And I'm looking at, and hey, I'm sorry, Yankee fans, Jeter fans like that. As a player, I know, Jose, you probably got it. People used to look at me like I was crazy when I said Jeter is, people were like, well, top two shortstops, Cal and Derek. And I'm like, ugh, no.
I wouldn't have any of those two.
Exactly. I go, ugh, no. But like, but people, I was like, Jeter. I was like, no way. People were like, oh, come on. I got people looking like I was crazy a lot. I doubled down. I would double down more on it, honestly. Like, and I said, not saying he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Like, definitely, I get it. But let's be real also. Of the players, like that percentage, like, and Jeter's like second all time with the highest percentage of votes for a first ballot guy. Like, I think Mo got 100%, Mariano Rivera. Yeah. Jeter's like number 2 at 99. I go, that right there is symbolic of the problem.
Right.
That his percentage is higher than Hank Aaron's.
Yeah. No, it's funny stuff, man. It's amazing, man. And look, he was a great player. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not here to shit on Jeter. I know you're not either, Darren. And we've already said this in this podcast, like, but I know folks have him really high up, and I don't see it. You know what I mean? I don't see it. Even watching this and seeing the day to day and seeing how clutch he was, great player. If I had to build a playoff roster, he might be my shortstop.
Mm-hmm.
But it's you're comparing them to guys even in this era where we already talked about it. He will be third for us when we talk about A-Rod, Nomar, and Jeter. He'll be third. And now that's when he was at his best. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we're talking about 2010, 2011, 12, 2000 we had a great season, but 11, 12, 13, 14, like it's no question there. I'm grabbing a lot of guys before Derek Jeter.
No, but I think this documentary, and I know when we do, the final episode 7, I think that'll be coming out maybe in a couple. I don't know if it's taking a week off, but maybe it might be next week. We'll give our overall grades, but this 5 and 6, usually you kind of wonder, is it going to drop off? Not only did this not drop off, it went above and beyond. It was a surprisingly great night of watching this docuseries, great night of TV. For me, this is a letter grade for episode 5 and 6. It's A. I'm gonna give it an A, which I haven't really been like. It's been B plus, A minus, but this is a straight up A.
Yeah, it was a home run. Both of them combined. I think, and we didn't even get into like 09's World Series. You know what I'm saying? Like with the Phillies and all that. Like that was cool. The most hated song in my life is the New York Alicia Keys song, and I love Alicia Keys. You know what I'm saying? Like, but there was a lot more we can dive into. But no, I agree with the A. I'm totally fine with that grade. It's getting better and better and better and better. I'm so excited to see what episode 7 is bringing. So I don't know. I needed this. You know what I'm saying? There have been some good documentaries. We were talking about it when we first started this reaction series for the captain. The Dickie V stuff. Like there's been a few really really good documentaries, but I needed this. I needed like a consistent docuseries that had me weak for like the next couple of weeks. Like this is so much needed for me, Jeremy. I feel like even for you too.
No, they've done a great job. ESPN Films really stepped it up. Randy Wilkins is not a director who I really know, but he's going to be on my radar for the future because I think it's a big task that he had. You got Spike Lee backing him, but he's looking over your shoulder. He's a producer, and then you're dealing with the topic of Derek Jeter, who's iconic and maybe the last true superstar, in my opinion, baseball's had, iconic figure, Derek Jeter, and also someone who's notoriously private and personal. So trying to get him to open up and to make all this, that must have been a really tough task. And so far, Randy Wilkins, the director, is knocking out the park. So I want to give him his props. It's because it's been really well done and really, honestly, great to watch this whole time. And it's nice to have something where like you can't wait for the next one. You're excited to do it, like not just for the podcast, just as a fan of sport and sport documentary. I can't wait till the next episode drops. So Jose, this was fun, man. I'm glad
before
we're doing
we wrap
this, and we got one more.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for this one. And before we wrap this up, though, I kind of had to do this real quick, just for shits and giggles. So I'm comparing Henley Ramirez to Derek Jeter from 2010 to 2014, and it's not even close, man. Like statistically, it's not even. And this is with that great, 2012 season that Jeter had, and it's Jeter has more plate appearances and games played, and more hits. But other than that, Ramirez got him in runs scored, home runs, RBI, doubles, triples, walks. It's not even close, man. But I just had to do that because it was bothering me, So, but no, great two episodes, man. I cannot wait for episode 7, and I can't wait to even come on here and talk about it and just kind of give like an ultimate like recap for the entire docuseries. But as you can see, we've been watching us throughout. Every recap episode. We're big fans of this one. So
So for the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jose Ruiz, I'm Darren B. Dove. Thank you guys for watching Bigger Than the Game with Darren, me, and Jose. Take care.
peace.